A former Canadian ambassador to China calls for China to interfere in our upcoming election. I'm Marco Perri. Welcome to the Perri platform. I just want to preface this entire conversation by saying John McCallum, the topic of discussion for today, he's no friend to Canada. So he's the former ambassador to China, and he's fallen into hot water as of late for his idiotic comments regarding China. He's clearly had some emotional ties to his previous post because he's still trying to advise us, and China too actually. So as mentioned before, in his previous role as ambassador, it entailed a couple of things like maintaining diplomatic relations, acting as a representative of Canada, and overall making sure things went well between the two countries. He's no longer in that role though, but he can't just keep his mouth shut. Just for some context, this is the same man who was making a case for China's detention of two Canadians, and he was also actively fighting against Canada during the whole Huawei incident. He's actively supported the Chinese government and called on Canada to release Huawei's CFO because we supposedly are in the wrong, at least according to McCallum. This week, he warns China that they should stop punishing Canada in relation to the Huawei debacle, or else it can result in the election of a conservative government. His new hobby is handing out advice to world powers on how to best meddle with Canadian elections, it seems. Amazing. You can really take this in two ways, his statement, about the consequences of China's actions really. If they keep putting pressure, well, Canadians are going to vote conservative, and supposedly China doesn't want that. The first way you can interpret that is he's phrased it in a way where he's clearly indicating that China would not want a conservative government in power. So why is that? After all, we shouldn't care in the least about which of our leaders would appease China. It's actually contrary to what we should look for when we're looking for the next public servants and leaders of Canada. What China wants is not always in line with what's best for Canada in many instances. Given that premise, it comes off as the Liberals are McCallum's pick for China's best friend. This is also the party that McCallum served under when he was appointed under Justin Trudeau and some previous PMs before that. So, you could say he probably knows the party pretty well. This itself is funny though, because it goes deeper than just that. What are McCallum's intentions with saying something this foolish? It seems to me that he's actively trying to undermine the Liberal Party, and maybe there is some reverse psychology going on here. First of all, I do not think that the Liberals have performed that badly given Canada's limitations. This is China we're talking about. What do we have in terms of recourse potential? Not too many options. The Liberal government has held strong, and they have not given up much ground. They've certainly not given in. Trudeau may have failed to garner respect at the G20 summit, but he still has not caved yet, and that means something. So, why is McCallum phrasing it as though China would love for this party to remain in power? I would question whether or not McCallum is trying to influence the election according to his very own agenda. To the public, it may seem like McCallum is making a good point, and I feel this will negatively impact the Liberals in some manner. To what degree is still up in the air, but still, McCallum is not a complete idiot. I'm sure he was able to put two and two together from the get-go, from the beginning of his inception. Him making this statement was no accident. I think it's within the realm of possibilities that he thinks he's just smarter than everyone and is playing the long haul with this. I think it's possible also that he's undermining the Liberals because he has some resentment here. He has reason to feel that way too. Keep in mind, he is the former ambassador to China. Keyword being former. He was effectively fired, humiliated, and forced to resign due to repeatedly ignoring the warnings of Justin Trudeau, the Liberal boss. Now we're going to believe he has the best intentions for that party? I find it hard to believe that someone like that, like McCallum, still has rainbow and butterfly feelings for this party, for the Liberals. Maybe he's jumped ship and wants the Conservatives in power, for his own reasons. It's plausible he's using his authority on the China situation in a way to leverage himself to reap some benefits from it. At the same time, I'm not convinced the Chinese government really gives a crap whether we have Liberals or Conservatives in power, and I definitely don't think they are afraid of Scheer. McCallum is sneaky from his record, we know that, and we also know he isn't thinking with a Canadian first mentality. I would be extremely careful when accepting whatever this man says. He's positioned himself and his statement in a way that makes people want to vote conservative, and I just don't trust that. There's also a second way to interpret his statement. The first is that China does not want conservatives and the liberals are weak. You can also view this as calling for election tampering, and that's probably the most worrisome part of it. He's effectively grabbed a metaphorical microphone and said, China, you need to perform certain actions to affect how the elections play out so you can reap the benefits. It's an asinine stance for a Canadian to have, openly calling for a top world power to play along and change the way people vote. I touched on this in my previous point, but I also don't find it true that the liberals were weak on this topic. They've done adequately at the very least. You really have to ask yourself why he's saying these things and seemingly calling for interference. He is not a neutral party. This is a dangerous man playing a dangerous game, and I believe it's in alignment with his own personal agenda. Given his previous role too, who knows? Maybe it's in alignment with China's agenda. It's stirring discourse. It's causing confusion. Those are all aspects of propaganda, and it seems like he is a willing participant. We don't know his motivations and where he even stands anymore. I think John McCallum is a snake, and we would do well to not trust him until he provides substantial evidence to his claims. Saying one soundbite without proof or rationale, it's not going to cut it from him. If he does think the conservatives are China's worst nightmare, or the liberals are not strong enough, okay, fair enough. You can have that opinion. But at the same time, if you want to be convincing people, you have to produce evidence. Give some research, some testimony, some proof, some facts, but he's given none of that. He was a previous member, very closely connected to the Liberal Party. If someone knows something, it might be him. He worked closely with China. But all we've gotten is these weird messages. Not very trustworthy, I would say. We also had the current Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who came out today and said that she is distancing the Trudeau government from the madness that John McCallum is spewing. She also said, Canadians should not be offering advice to any foreign governments on how to affect election results. I agree with both of those premises. McCallum is an ex-ambassador. He does not represent the current government any longer, and he is definitely not the voice of Canadians as a whole. And on top of that, giving advice to China? That's insane. He should not be doing this, especially because he has a certain prestige to him. He is the ex-ambassador. Although he currently does not hold power, he once did, and we don't know what sorts of diplomatic ties he's formed. He's really a risk to Canada at this point. Even Andrew Scheer himself has chimed in, and he's condemned the actions. Scheer was more concerned that McCallum is stacking the odds against the Conservatives, but I think Scheer is missing the point there. Maybe in the eyes of China, Scheer is less attractive. And that's what McCallum has literally said. But who cares? McCallum is saying the right message in terms of Canadian voters. If you look at it from the Conservative perspective, it's what voters want to hear. He's actually helping the Conservatives, even though it's contrary to the literal essence of his message. It's right there in the context. Lots of people are frustrated with China, and they don't want to see us roll over. At the very least, it's a neutral move. It's not going to hinder the Conservatives. I can't see this being damaging in any way. But on the flip side, it has massive advantages. Because first of all, as I outlined before, it comes off as if McCallum is saying the Liberals are weak. People don't like that. It comes off as if saying the Conservatives are China's worst nightmare. He hasn't directly said anything, but he's hinting heavily at the Conservative Party, and I don't trust that. Scheer then goes further and says the Foreign Affairs Minister needs to do more. So she did say that she condemns McCallum and that he doesn't speak for all of Canada, but maybe she can go forward in terms of offering further condemnation and doing something about removing his platform. It is true that he was a previous high-ranking individual, and he does have ties to the party, even if not officially seated, and I guess they could have gone further in their rejection of McCallum, but that leads to another line of thinking, and some people are asking if maybe this is also actually planned as well, using McCallum as a proxy. But I will need to see further evidence to be convinced of that, but the going theory is that the Liberal Party officially is making spokes and claims to appease the citizens, but secretly, McCallum is this proxy who's dealing with China. So it is kind of far-fetched, I think. McCallum has been removed from the party, and I don't think that there is any positive relations there, but it is possible. I would just need to see evidence to further accept that. So the current government holds firm that their focus is on the two Canadians who are currently being held in what is believed to be a retaliation to the CFO of Huawei being arrested. I think that is quite likely the case. All the evidence points towards China using them as bargaining chips, and that's not even the full extent of China's retaliatory efforts. They have stifled some trade, our soy, our canola, our meats, and China knows what they're doing. It's so obvious. They're pushing around their economic weight and forcing Canada to either comply or face massive hardship. China is a massive trading partner. Having them pull out hurts the Canadian economy tremendously. But on the flip side, having Canada pull out of deals with China, China's going to be okay because they're not on the same level. It's really just a fact. And that ties into what Canada can really do against China. Canada is maybe about 1/10 the size. We just don't have the strength to be bullying them back. So, what do? We need our allies to step in and help us. And it's been a slow approach. So Trudeau and the government keep saying, we're trying, we're doing stuff. At the G20 summit, okay, they maybe amass some support, but what's it materializing into? This speaks to another issue, and that is, what really is our reach? Because those Canadians, the ones we're talking about, have been detained. They've been detained for months now, and end doesn't seem to be anywhere in sight. All the focus in the world, all the support in the world, it doesn't mean anything if nothing really happens. And it all loops back to the original problem, that we are in this mess because we were forced to extradite the CFO due to America's request. America is a country who can actually put up a fight against China. They have the resources to do that without even being violent. They can do it through economic hardship because they are a massive economy too, and they have the same weight, or at least a comparable weight, which will make China feel pressure. At the very least, they should be doing what they can to help us out, because we have suffered collateral damage due to the request. It's very unfortunate for Canada. We're in a crappy situation, and right now the best thing we can do is to hold firm and try and find a way that leads to the least amount of pain for our country, while also showing China that we are not going to buckle at their threats. That's a tremendously slippery slope that we do not want to go down. Once you give in, you basically signal to China that this is how they get their way. In the future, if we have a problem with them, if anything happens, if we do something that they don't agree with, all they have to do is kidnap some Canadians, detain them, don't let them out, try to destroy our economy, threaten us, treat us like crap, and eventually we'll give in. So, like a spoiled child who doesn't know anything about compassion and how to operate in the world fairly and properly, adequately, they're going to continue on that path because no one's there to correct them. It's not a precedent that Canada wants to set, and I am adversely against doing anything to enable that. John McCallum is playing this weird game where it seems to be he's on the side of China for some reason, and maybe that's because of his ties with being the ambassador. He was obviously a bad pick for that, and now he's mouthing off, talking further nonsense. He's not someone to be trusted, and his words, they should hold very little salt to you, because it's unproven as to where his loyalties really lie. So that's about it for today. Thanks for joining me on the Perri platform. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and follow me on Twitter at Perri platform. I'll see you soon.